Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the best AD carries for patch 6.23. So the format I'm going to do this video in is going to be a little bit different here. So first off, I'm going to talk about the tier 1 champions, and I'm going to go into detail as to why they're really strong this patch. And then after that, I'm going to briefly explain why the other champions are in the tier 2 and in the tier 3 categories. So with that being said guys, let's get into the video. So the first tier 1 champion for this patch is going to be Caitlyn. Caitlyn actually has not been nerfed since last season. When I was doing research for this video, I was looking up like when champions have been buffed and nerfed, and Caitlyn, she's one of the only AD carries that hasn't been nerfed in like such a long time. So because of that, and because other AD carries have been nerfed a lot recently, Caitlyn's definitely a very strong pick right now. She's got a great laning phase, and she can actually deal with Vayne in the laning phase and shut her down right now. Vayne is one of the best AD carries this patch. And if you know what you're doing as Caitlyn against Vayne, then you can delay her power spike and you can keep her down in the early game so that she doesn't reach her mid to late game spike. And if you can do that as Caitlyn against Vayne, then you're definitely going to do very well with this champion. She also does have a very good late game herself. Her headshots late game, and especially if the enemies do step on traps, are going to deal so much damage. I think that Caitlyn's late game is definitely very underrated. A lot of people don't really think that Caitlyn has the best late game, but she definitely does in my opinion. She's got one of the best late games for any AD carry. And she also is a very reliant ADC. You really aren't going to lose lane as Caitlyn, or you shouldn't lose lane as Caitlyn, as long as you can just like sit back and farm. Like if you're in a harder poke matchup, say you're going against like a Brand or a Zyra, you can still go even in those lanes, because if you need to, you can farm with your Q, and you do have your long range auto attacks. Now when should you not pick Caitlyn? So right now I would use her against Vayne. I'm pretty sure Vayne's got like some crazy pick rate, like 30 or 40%. So if you know what you're doing in that matchup, then look to pick Caitlyn against her to try to shut her down in the early game. And you can pretty much pick her into anything. Like as long as you're confident on Caitlyn, then you can do well in most matchups. The second champion in the tier 1 category is going to be Twitch. So Twitch is really good right now. He did get buffs to his W and his Q in patch 6.22, and I really think that the buffs to his W are actually really strong, and they're a lot stronger than some people might be making them out to be. So the reason I think Twitch's W, the changes are so good, is because his W now stays on the ground for a few seconds. So in the laning phase, you can use your W really effectively to just zone the enemies from CS. If they are going in for CS, you throw your W down, and if they do end up staying in your W and they try to go for that CS, then you're going to be able to get a lot of damage off with your E and your auto attacks, and it's just a really good trading tool now for Twitch in the laning phase. His W can also be used to like zone in team fights now and to block off an area, so I really do like those buffs to Twitch's W. He's also one of the best 2v2 laning AD carries once you do finish your rune-ins. Your rune-ins is just going to allow you to deal like AoE damage pretty much, because if you've got your ultimate up and the enemies are standing close together, then they're going to be getting hit by those rune-in procs, which will apply your passive, and that means that once you get a few auto attacks off, you're going to get the maximum damage from your E off on both of those champions. So the amount of damage output that you do have with Twitch once you get that item is really strong. Blade also did get buffed this patch, and if you guys do remember back to last season, when Blade was a really strong item, Twitch would end up rushing it, and he would look to go for assassinations once he did get that item. It is getting reverted back to the stats that it had last season, so it's going from 6% of the target's current health back up to 8% now. So because of those buffs, that could be an indirect buff to Twitch this patch, which could make him even stronger. Now another thing that I think is actually making him really strong right now is the short cooldown on his ultimate. His ultimate at rank 1 only has a 90-second cooldown, and when you compare that to other AD carries like for example Jin's ultimate has a 120-second cooldown at rank 1. That's 30 seconds longer than Twitch's, and that means if Twitch can time the cooldown of Jin's ultimate, or if Jin does use his ultimate at the exact same time as Twitch, that means the next fight that happens, Twitch is going to have that advantage because he's going to have his ultimate up, the Jhin is not going to have his up, and that's why that Twitch actually does really good against Jhin right now. So if you are looking to like a counter to Jhin, then I would recommend trying Twitch against him. Another thing that I really like about Twitch is that he does have that element of surprise with his Q. Because of Twitch's Q, you never really have to be standing right with your team to be effective and to be ready for a team fight to start. Whenever I'm playing Twitch, I always kind of sit off in the fog of war. I'm still close to my team so that if a team fight starts, I'll be able to participate in it, but I'm not like showing myself to the enemy team because with Twitch's Q, when a team fight does start, you want to pop that, get into a good position, and then just spray the enemy team down with your ultimate. And I just think that's like a really strong part of his kit, and it is a reason to why he does have a really good late game and to why he does shine in those team fights. Now, as for when you should not pick Twitch, I would recommend trying to avoid Vi and Hecarim if you can. Whenever I am playing Twitch, I usually just ban out Vi. I think Vi is just super strong this patch, and she's just a really annoying jungler to deal with, especially when you're playing AD carry. So if you're looking to play Twitch, just ban out Vi, and if your team can ban out Hecarim as well, then that is definitely going to increase your chances of winning. And also, he's pretty much great in most other situations right now. If you know how to play Twitch, then he's a great AD carry this patch. And the final tier 1 AD carry for this patch is going to be Vayne. So there are multiple reasons to why Vayne is such a strong AD carry this patch. I feel like you don't even need to be an experienced Vayne player to do well on her right now. So a few reasons to why she's such a strong pick right now is because the Infinity Edge static Shiv power spike on her is just super strong. You don't even need to do well in the laning phase as Vayne. As long as you can just go even, or even if you do fall behind a little bit, once you do get those 2 items, you're going to be stronger than the enemy AD carry a lot of the time. Your dueling potential once you get those 2 items is insane as well. You can pretty much outduel like any other AD carry as long as you can like dodge their skill shots with your Q, and if you can get that condemn off. She also does have one of the best late games right now for any AD carry, and because we are in sort of like a tank meta right now, with Courage of the Colossus mastery being really strong, we are seeing a lot of tanks being played, and because Vayne is one of the best tank killing champions with her W, that also makes her a great pick this patch. She has also been buffed quite a bit recently, not these past like 2 or 3 patches. I think it was like 4 or 5 patches ago maybe, where she got a buff to her Q's damage, and her Q also does now work on towers, so it allows her to tower push a lot more effectively and get that first blood tower in a lot more games now. And you also cannot pink ward Vayne when she is stealth with her ultimate, which is actually a pretty underrated reason to why she's such a strong AD carry right now. In high levels of play, that would be a really good way to counter Vayne. A lot of people would pick up a pink ward once it did reach the mid to late game, and you would be able to focus her down in team fights, but because you can't reveal her stealth now, it just makes her that much harder to pick out in team fights and that much stronger of an AD carry. Now, as for when you should not pick Vayne, I would try to avoid strong early game supports if you're looking to be the most successful on Vayne. So Zyra and Brand, they can do pretty well against Vayne. You can still do well in those matchups because you do have your Q to like dodge their skill shots, but they can, if they do end up like getting poke off on you, you really can't trade with them in the laning phase unless you are playing with a strong early game support on your team. And then if she is open right now, I would pretty much pick her in every situation. You really don't even need to have a good laning phase as Vayne right now to be successful on her. So if we move on to the tier 2 AD carries now, these AD carries are going to be Jhin, Jinx, and Misfortune. So the main reason to why Jhin is not a tier 1 AD carry and the reason he is in tier 2 for this patch is because he really doesn't do very well against Vayne and Twitch. Vayne does a really good job against Jhin because Vayne can easily dodge his ultimate shots and his W as well with her Q, and in an all-in, like at level 6, or like in an all-in in a mid to late game team fight, Vayne is just going to destroy Jhin. Jhin cannot keep up with the DPS that Vayne can put out. Jhin does rely on like stacking his autos and then getting that 4-shot crit off, but Vayne is going to kill Jhin before he even is able to get that 4-shot crit off, so he is still a good AD carry, but against Vayne and Twitch, he does struggle a little bit. And the main reason to why these champions are not tier 1 for this patch is because we are in a pretty heavy dive and assassin meta right now. We're seeing a lot of Vi being played, a lot of Hecarim. We're seeing like a lot of assassins being played like Kha'Zix, and after the assassin rework, there's pretty much an assassin like in every single game right now. And Jhin, Jinx, and Misfortune, they do struggle a little bit against those assassins, especially if it does reach a mid to late game team fight. If you don't have that support champion that can peel for you, then it's going to be very hard for you to deal with those dive champions in team fights. So that is the main thing that differentiates the tier 2 from the tier 1 AD carries. The tier 1 AD carries, for example, like Caitlyn and Vayne, they can deal with those dive champions a little bit better than the tier 2 champions. For example, Vayne can condemn them away if they're trying to jump on her. She can also kite away with her Q, and then Caitlyn, she can use her traps and she can also use her net to get away like in team fights. And then Twitch, he never really needs to be in a team fight until he wants to because of his Q, so he can wait for Hecarim or Vi or an assassin to go for that engage, and once they have done that, then he can pop out of his stealth and use his ultimate. And lastly, if we take a look at the tier 3 AD carries for this patch, they are going to be Ezreal, Sivir, Corki, Draven, Ashe, and Lucian. So I think that you should really only be playing these AD carries over the AD carries on my tier 2 and my tier 1 if you're a main of one of these champions, or if you really know what you're doing with them. For example, I feel like Lucian right now, he's just a lot weaker than some of the other AD carries in my tier 2 and in my tier 1, because number 1, he has been nerfed recently, and number 2, he really doesn't provide any utility for his team. If you do fall behind with an AD carry like a Lucian or even like an Ezreal or a Corki, then you're not really going to be very successful on that champion. None of those champions really do have like a great late game. Like Corki and Lucian, their late games are pretty below average compared to someone like a Vayne or a Twitch or a Jinx, so you do really have to rely on having a good early game with these AD carries and not falling behind in the early game to be successful on them. Draven, Ashe, and Sivir, they could be in like a tier 2.5 or just like a little bit above the tier 3, but not as good as the tier 2. They all do provide, or not all of them, Ashe and Sivir, they do provide that utility, so even if they do fall behind, you are still going to be somewhat useful on those AD carries. And Draven, he could be tier 1 if you actually can play Draven to his fullest potential. I've definitely seen some like really good Draven players, and if you can catch your axes and you just can position well with Draven, then you can do really well on him. But I've also seen so many Draven players that just like rage if their team takes a kill in the laning phase. If they don't get ahead, then they just kind of just tilt really easily and they don't try to win. So if you are a strong Draven player, then you can definitely do really well on him. But if you don't play Draven, or if you haven't played at least like 50 games on him, then I wouldn't really recommend pulling him out in ranked. So that is going to be all for this video, guys. If you did enjoy this new format and you would like to see me continue with it and do it for the other roles, then be sure to leave a like on the video. You can also comment down below and give me some constructive criticism on ways that I could improve this new format. So thanks for watching, guys. If you did enjoy, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you guys have not already. Have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.